So, whenever the subject comes up of terror birds versus raptors, or the best sort of scout mount to have, or the scout pack creatures to have, I've always held the opinion that terror birds are better than raptors, or at least on the same level. And I've recently been doing a little bit of number crunching, and even with the TLC update, I still hold that opinion. So I'm going to try and show you why I hold that opinion in this video, and hopefully you'll agree, but if not, maybe a bit of food for thought. So I'm going to have a look at the abilities and show how they can be utilized. There will be a demonstration of this, obviously, so you can see what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to have a look at the stats and do some number crunching. Don't worry, this won't be a spreadsheet special. I can already hear people going, no. Nah, I'm just gonna show you some graphs as a result of it, just to illustrate why these things are the way they are. Not gonna lie, did kind of enjoy doing the number crunching. Yeah, I'm a nerd, alright, I'm a nerd. Let's just go into this. The first ability that raptors have is something we've probably all been victim to, and that's the pounce. So a raptor can pounce you out of a saddle, and it can pounce small creatures. Now what I've got to say with that though, is that pounce actually comes with a massive downside. And that is if you pounce the wrong thing, or when you pounce something, you can't move, you can't get away for quite a long time. So as you can see, when I pounce something here, I'm trying to move the whole time, and I can't move away until a timer's up. Now in a situation where you were to pounce someone off a saddle, their creature then has all that time to attack you. So I don't think that's actually something you want to be using in PvP, because potentially you could do one of two things. You could pounce them off their saddle, well, their creature's going to attack you. You could then accidentally pounce, say they were running by a dodo, you pounce that dodo, well, not only are you not attacking them, you now have them free to do whatever they want. So I don't think that's a good thing to be using, and it's something to be really aware of. And I don't think we should really include that into this, because I think anyone who's on a raptor shouldn't be trying to use the pounce on another player. In PvE as well, it has limited use, real limited use. I mean, the size of thing that they can pounce is actually quite small and nothing really particularly dangerous. The second ability that the raptors have is now their pack bonus. Now, if you get 5 or more raptors in a pack, and the leader does their roar/call ability, leader call, whatever it is, pack leader call, pack leader roar, basically. If they do that, the members of the pack get a big damage resistance and damage buff, and the leader of the pack gets an even bigger damage resistance buff and damage buff. In a mate boosted pack, the members of the pack get a 2 times damage increase with everything taken into account. And the resistance they get is they get a multiplier of 0.18. So any damage they take is multiplied by 0.18. For the leader, the damage multiplier is like 0.15. So it gets an even bigger damage reduction. That is really good. And that is why in a pack versus pack situation, they are ridiculously dangerous. Take that leader out of the situation though, and they basically go down to just a regular mate boosted situation. For the terror birds, their ability is obviously nothing combat related. They have the ability to glide. Now this glide I think is really underestimated most of the time, in that even on a very shallow incline, they can actually get quite a lot of distance. Now this really comes into play is if you actually take into account, say, Ark's general terrain undulation, is you can actually get a huge amount of distance even on a hill that, say for example, you ran over it, you wouldn't launch yourself. If they do that, they've got the ability to get a huge amount of distance and potentially get safe. So a single player on a terror bird could potentially get safe from a pack quite easily, and there's going to be stats that come into play with that, which I will talk about later on. On top of that, I think that for PvE situations, it's actually, as a scout, I think you have a greater versatility there for your movement around the map. So for example, you can jump off a cliff and you'll be safe. You can potentially go from peak to peak, and you can actually sort of traverse things like, say as a canyon, you just want to go to the other side of the canyon, or say a bay, you can get most of, if not all of the way across, say, a bay, whereas a raptor would have to go, or any foot creature would have to go all the way around there. So you can actually reduce your travel times and your versatility. I mean, for example, you can go up very, very steep inclines just by holding a space bar and going up on a terror bird. So that actually does come into play, even though it doesn't seem like it's a combat ability. The ability to choose how and when a battle happens, I think, is a massive factor that needs to be taken into account. So that's the abilities. Now to talk about the stats. Before I start talking about the stats, I need to talk about the way that Arc increases a stat value. And what it is it depends on the starting value for that stat once they're tamed. So a creature will gain a specific amount per level it puts in the wild before you tame it. Once you tame that creature though, it will gain a percentage increase based on the number at the point of tame. So what I've got here, this is a plot of all of the Raptor increases based on X amount of wild levels. So as you can see, you've got the base wild there, and you've got 10 wild levels, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. 60 wild levels is even on, say, a map that has 150 max levels, you are looking at mutations to potentially be able to have that. 50, potentially doable on a 150 map, you'd have to tame a lot of things. 40, very doable on both a 150 and a 120 map. Now, one of the things you're probably going to notice is at the bottom there is a kind of overlap between the base wild stats and the level 10 wild. So actually, at a certain point, it's better to just have wild levels in there. But to illustrate the way in which this changes the stat increase, if we look at just the 10 wild and the 60 wild, you're going to see there's a massive divergence in the gains they gain per level. Here we go. So as you can see there is that every level you gain with that 60 wild points once it's tamed increases more than an increase on the 10 wild. So that's just something to take into account, is that if there is a mismatch, so say a creature gets more points in the wild per wild level, or they get more of a percentage increase per level, you're going to have this divergence where the more points that go in, the better they get in that stat compared to the other creature. Just something to bear in mind, because that does come into play for quite a lot of the comparison. So with that in mind, if we look at the speed of both of them, you can see that the Raptor starts off behind the Terror Bird. And for it to come up to the same speed as the Terror Bird, it needs to put 7 levels into that stat. So for PvE, maybe that's something you might not have to worry about. But I would say that if you're talking about a PvP situation, then you've got to take that into account. The Raptor can get as fast or faster than a Terror Bird, but as you can also see, it takes quite a lot of points, about 21, 22 points, just for it to catch up points per level. And after that, it's a catch-up game for the Terror Bird. When it comes to the health, there's just an outright divergence from the Terror Bird compared to the Raptor. The Terror Bird will always be higher. What I've got here is a plot of if they start with 40 wild levels and you imprint them, this is where it would go. This is actually a best case scenario for what I think is reasonable. So I think if you're going to actually be comparing them, you've got to be looking at good ends of the stats. So 40 points in the wild. If you actually start taking more points into account, the Terror Bird gets even better compared to the Raptor. And also, if we now plot out the fact that the Raptor has to put 7 points into its speed, that means there's a limit of, well, the maximum -7 levels that it can put into its health. And as you can see with that, is even something where you're not putting stamina into it, so something that would be a pack animal, it would still have to take a significant cut in its health, and the maximum it could get to is about 9,500 health, whereas the Terror Bird can go up to 14,000 health. When it comes to comparing the damage of the two, there's a couple of things we need to take into account. Now, the first one is that the Terror Birds may do more damage, but they attack slower. Now, I was able to get 2.1 attacks per second in ideal situations with the Raptor. I don't think you could keep that up in a fight, I really don't, but we're going to use that number. The Terror Bird was able to get 1.7 consistently, and I was able to keep that up in a fight. But if we're talking about pack animals as well, the potential there is for the pack animals to attack that quickly. That doesn't have a human component there. There would be an element there, obviously, if anything was knocked back or moved around, you wouldn't get the same attacks. But anyway, we're just going to go with those numbers. Now we plot those out. As you can see, the bottom lines there, that is just what would happen with those wild levels. You tamed them out, what would the DPS be? The next line is what would you get if you added points into taming them at 40 wild? Well, you get that DPS. Now the top two lines are the situations where they're in a pack. So, for example, the Terror Birds would have the mate boost of being in a pack, and the Raptor would get that massive boost of their damage just by having the pack bonus in there. And because there's a mismatch in the health, what I've gone ahead and done is say, okay, how long would it take a Terror Bird that was in a pack to kill another pack animal, whether that pack animal had a pack bonus or not, and vice versa. So a Raptor in a pack, how long would it take to kill a Terror Bird with or without their bonuses? So as you can see here, a terror bird trying to attack a raptor in a pack is way slower than the raptor killing the terror bird. Even when it's best and worst situation for the terror bird, the raptor still kill the terror birds quicker. Except when you take that pack bonus out of the equation, the terror birds can kill as quickly as the raptors can, proportionally to the amount of health they could have, which is something I'm going to come back to later on, because obviously if you can take that pack bonus out of the situation, then this is something that's going to be interesting when it comes to PvP. The final stat to look at is stamina, and this affects everything that the player-ridden creatures can do. So the terror bird looks like it has a very similar stamina to the raptor, but actually it's a quite large difference, because the terror bird takes less stamina per second to run, and it also takes less stamina per second to actually attack. This affects how long they can run for and how long they can attack. If we plot out how long the terror bird can run for versus that of the raptor, you can see that they start off, if they start on the same level of 40 wild, straight away the terror bird can run for 30 seconds more than the raptor, and that means that the raptor would have to put 4 points in to be able to run for as long. Now if we combine that as well with the fact they need to put 7 points in to be able to catch them, well, a player-ridden raptor is basically 10 to 11 points down on a terror bird to start off with. The terror bird also gets a bigger bang for its buck for how long can they run for per point of stamina. So that's just something that the raptor starts falling behind immediately on. And finally, if we look at the total amount of damage they could do with X amount of stamina starting at the same point, you can see that for the raptor to kill a terror bird, let's say put all its points into health, well, it would take 12 points of stamina to do that, whereas the terror bird would take 22 points of stamina to do that. But don't forget that the terror bird gets basically a free 10 to 11 points. Right, so that's all the comparisons there of the stats. Now let's bring it all together. Drawing all that together, I think you need to put things into categories. So, for example, which is better for PvE, which is better for PvP, in what situations? So, if we take PvE, I think as a solo mount, you've got to say the terror bird is pound for pound better than the raptor, starts with better stats, has more potential. For a group dynamic, well, I think also anything that you could kill in a group with raptors, you could kill in a group with terror birds. So I'm going to say that they're basically on the same level. I mean, the amount of damage you can put down with a group of either of them, there's nothing you can't take on. And anything you couldn't take on with one, you wouldn't be able to take on with the other, i.e. Gigas, Titanosaurs, Wyverns. When it comes to PvP, well, one-on-one, I think we need to be saying once again, the terror bird wins that. Pound for pound, not only that, the movement options, the choice of when you're going to start the fight, I think that really comes into account there. I'm also going to say that if you've got a group versus one situation, so you're on one of these and you're being chased by a group of the other, once again, same reasons, you've got to take the terror bird. It has more chance to be faster and has more movement options to evade. So a group versus one situation, you've got to take the terror bird. The raptor is just absolutely, limited to being on the ground and hoping that it's got those stats more than terror bird, whereas even the terror bird doesn't have the stats. It has that movement ability, so you can get a height and get away. In a pack-on-pack situation, yes, the raptors definitely start off statistically better, and all things being fair, they should win a fight. But when we are talking pack-on-pack, we do have to take into account that you might not have the same size of pack. If you've got a mismatch in the numbers, that can change things. If the player doesn't know what they're doing, that can change things. If you are going to be subject to general fustercluckery, things are getting stuck behind trees, that changes things. So yes, I'm going to say that nominally they are better, but it's not a situation that couldn't be changed by a player who knows what they're doing, and it's not a situation that couldn't be subject to the terror birds winning if you just had a bigger terror bird pack. So I will say that that's a raptor win there, but it's not a guaranteed win in all situations because it is the one that's just got the most variables involved. Now, if we're talking you're in a pack situation and you're fighting something other than one of these two, then I think once again they've got to be on equal grounds. Anything that could take out a pack of terror birds can probably take out a pack of raptors. Anything that a pack of raptors can kill, a pack of terror birds could kill as well. So I'm going to give that an equal stand in there. So tallying all of that up, I have to say that the terror birds are the better choice to make because you're literally only talking one situation where you happen to come across a pack of same size, same player skill, things like that, where the Raptors is the best choice to make. I'm not going to choose a dino for that. I'm going to choose a dino for what I can use in all general situations. In all general situations, you know, I have a greater choice of being safe in the Terror Birds than I do in the Raptor pack. Yes, I could take out a Terror Bird pack most likely if I'm running a Raptor pack and I've got a Raptor pack that's the same size or bigger than that Terror Bird pack. But that's a lot of ifs in that entire equation there. Whereas I would much rather take the creature that's better as a solo and almost as good, if not as good, just with one extra creature in a pack situation. So for that reason, you got to say Terror Birds are better, or I do anyway. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope it's been interesting. Hopefully, you know, even if you agree or disagree, it's been some food for thought. Please do let me know. Any comments or suggestions, feedback, anything, drop in the comments section. I do actually want to do this with Rexes versus Spinos. I think that would be an interesting one. I also want to do it with Trikes versus Stegos. That's also another interesting one. Because obviously, you might think, well, Trikes have obviously got that. Well, Stegos have that sort of different area. But anyway, that's something for another day. I don't dare do it soon because I think Verbicates will probably gib smack me if I start talking to her about stats again too soon. Yeah, I've annoyed her a bit. But anyway, moving on from that, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Catch you all soon. Bye.